Hi everyone, welcome back to Julia's story. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. Rain stitched itself across the town in thin silver threads, soft enough to blur the street lamps but hard enough to settle into my coat and weight my steps. My boy, Arif, had fallen asleep on the bus home from school, and I carried his book bag while he leaned into my side and mumbled half-dreams. The driver let us off 2 stops early because a tree branch had fallen across the hill. That meant the long way along the outer road, the one that curls past the old quarry and the bend where the guardrail is rusted through. People say grief makes time heavy. They are wrong. It makes time thin as glass. 1 year since the accident that took my husband and left me counting coins in the kitchen at night, whispering numbers so Arif would not hear the tremble. 1 year since I learned how to fix a leaky tap with a butter knife and a prayer, and how to smile at customers in the bakery even when I wanted to sit on the flour sacks and cry. We were never rich, but we were 2, which felt like plenty. Now the apartment is quiet when Arif sleeps, and I talk to the empty chair as if it will answer back if I just choose the right words. The rain made the road smell like tar and leaves. We tucked ourselves close to the railing and walked single file, me in front, Arif behind, playing a game where he stepped only on the white lines. We were halfway around the bend when the world changed sound. It was not the roar of an engine or the scream of brakes. It was a low, wrong groan, like metal remembering it was once ore. Then the crash came, far ahead but close enough to hit my chest with its echo. Arif gripped the back of my coat. His eyes were wide and dark in the rain. I told him to stay behind me and keep a hand on the rail. We hurried as fast as the slick road allowed. A car had left the curve and taken the broken part of the barrier with it. Its nose was wedged into the shallow ditch where the quarry's runoff collected, had crumpled like paper. Steam hissed from under the warped metal and mixed with the rain until the air tasted metallic. For a second, I could only see the mess of glass and the warped frame of the door. Then a shape moved inside. A man. He was upright in the driver's seat, dazed or hurt, head tilted forward like sleep had found him without asking permission. The windshield had held, but hairline cracks webbed across it and glittered with each flash from the passing street lamp. I told Arif to stand back by the milestone and not to move, no matter what he heard. He nodded, small and brave, and pressed himself to the post like it was a friend. I ran to the driver's side and pulled at the handle. It did not give. The window was up. I hit it with my palm and yelled. The man did not answer. His breathing fogged the glass for a second, sank away, then returned faintly. I looked around. No other headlights. No one else on the road. The ditch water lapped at my shoes, cold and full of grit. I picked a stone from the edge and struck the window at the corner, hard. Once. Twice. The glass spidered more. On the 3rd strike it gave with a sigh and a scatter of dull pebbles. Rain blew into the car. The man flinched and blinked, eyes trying to focus through the wet. I told him my name, told him to stay with me. His mouth moved. No sound. Blood ran from a cut at his hairline and slipped into his eyebrow before the rain chased it away. I reached in and found the lock, then leaned my shoulder into the door. It stuck and then yielded all at once, nearly pitching me forward. I caught myself on the seat and smelled leather and the sharp tang of airbag powder. This car had been expensive once. Right now it was only a box that needed opening. His seat belt had cinched tight. I fumbled for the buckle and pressed, but my fingers were slick and clumsy. It finally clicked and released, and his body slumped toward me. He was heavy with shock. I hooked my hands under his arms and eased him sideways, talking the whole time so his mind would have something to cling to. He tried to help, but his legs were trapped under the compressed dash. I braced my foot on the frame and pulled. Something shifted under the hood with a groan. He cried out, quick and raw. I told him I was sorry and pulled again. When he came free, we spilled together onto the wet earth. I dragged him back from the ditch and propped him against the only dry thing around, a rock that had no interest in our story. He coughed and sucked air like he had forgotten how and was relearning fast. Up close, under the street lamp's thin halo, his face looked too pale for the dark coat he wore. He seemed older than me by a handful of years, with a kind of jaw that looks firm even when it is trembling. Sirens were a rumor in the rain, too far to count on. I stripped off my scarf and pressed it to the cut at his hairline. He watched me like people watch the horizon when they are not sure if the storm will pass them by or turn and come back for a second try. Arif edged closer, small shoes slipping on the wet. I held a hand up without looking and told him to stay there. He did, but I felt his eyes on us, the kind that learn from everything. The man swallowed and finally found a shard of voice. "Thank you," he said, just air and intent. His accent was hard to place. City, but not from here. He tried to lift a hand to the wound and then winced and let it fall. His coat had torn along the sleeve, and beneath it I saw a flash of a shirt that cost more than a week's wages even when it was on sale in a shop that used too much glass. I told him to keep still and counted his breaths the way a baker counts seconds while watching the rise of a loaf. Slow, slow, faster, then steady. He blinked rain from his eyelashes. A car passed on the far stretch and did not slow. The sirens were still too faint. He shifted, and a wallet slid from the inside of his coat and landed in the mud by my knee. It was heavy and neatly stitched, the leather too fine for our road. The wind flipped it open to a card thick as a business they write about in the city pages. I saw a name stamped in careful letters. I knew that name. Everyone in this town knew it, even if they never said it out loud. It belongs to buildings and headlines and a charity wing at the hospital that sends a box of fruit to the bakery every winter. It did not belong to a man bleeding on the roadside under my scarf. His eyes found mine, and then the card, and then the mud. His mouth closed around whatever he had been about to say, and he looked away toward the hillside as if it might offer a better answer. The sirens grew louder, close enough now to believe in. Arif's small voice drifted over the rain. "Mama, the lights are coming." The man coughed once, hard. Through teeth clenched against the pain, he whispered a single sentence meant only for me, a sentence the rain almost stole. "Do not tell them who I am." The ambulance lights painted the wet road red and blue, strobing through the night like a heartbeat that had lost its rhythm. Paramedics rushed forward, their boots splashing through puddles, voices sharp and rehearsed. One knelt beside the man, touching his pulse. The other opened a kit with practiced speed. I stepped back just enough to let them work, scarf still pressed against his wound. His eyes flicked to me once, steady despite the chaos, reminding me of the words he had whispered. "Do not tell them who I am." I nodded, barely moving my lips, though I did not know why I agreed. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like he was handing me something fragile, something breakable. Maybe it was because I had seen his face go pale in the rain, and I could not bring myself to betray the only thing he asked. "Ma'am, did you witness the crash?" One of the paramedics asked without looking up. "Yes," I answered softly. He lost control at the bend, slid into the ditch. No one else was involved. They worked fast. Gauze, bandages, oxygen mask. One of them spoke into a radio clipped to his shoulder, reporting vitals in words I barely understood. Arif edged closer now, his small hand finding mine. I squeezed it, grateful for the anchor. The man's wallet still lay in the mud where it had fallen, the corner of the card peeking out like a secret trying to crawl back into the world. I bent casually, as if straightening my scarf, and slipped it into my pocket. His gaze caught mine for the briefest moment, a flicker of relief before another wave of pain forced his eyes shut. They lifted him onto the stretcher. The rain turned his hair into black strands that clung to his forehead. He groaned when they secured him, but said nothing else. "Is he family?" the paramedic asked me. No, I said quickly. I was here. I helped. He nodded, already distracted by the beeping of the monitor. They hoisted the stretcher into the back of the ambulance. The doors clanged shut. For a long moment I just stood there, soaked through, scarf damp with his blood still clutched in my hand. Arif tugged at my sleeve. "Mama," he whispered. "Is he going to die?" I crouched and pulled him close. "No, sweetheart. They'll take care of him now." But inside, my chest twisted. I had seen enough in the bakery when old Mr. Carto collapsed by the counter last winter. Sometimes the body is too tired to fight. The ambulance pulled away, siren wailing, leaving behind the echo of urgency. The police arrived soon after, but by then the ditch was just a broken car and rain pooling where blood had thinned into nothing. I gave my statement. Simple, stripped bare, nothing about names or wallets. They thanked me, called me brave, and let me walk home with Arif. That night, after putting my boy to bed, I sat at the small kitchen table. The apartment smelled of damp coats drying by the radiator. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the wallet. It was heavy, stitched in leather so fine it felt out of place in my rough hands. Inside, cards gleamed under the light. The name was still there, sharp and undeniable. A name that belonged to one of the wealthiest men in the country. A man whose face appeared sometimes in magazines people flipped through at the salon. I remembered the way his voice broke when he begged me not to tell. Why would a man like him, rich, powerful, untouchable, want to hide who he was? I closed the wallet and pushed it away, but my fingers trembled. Because now, whether I wanted it or not, I carried his secret. And secrets, I knew too well, have a way of changing everything. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the air still carried that heavy smell of wet earth and iron. I woke before Arif, my mind restless, the wallet still sitting on the kitchen table like a stone I couldn't move. I made tea, though my hands trembled as I poured. The name inside that wallet haunted me. I had never met him before, but I had heard enough whispers in the bakery, seen enough headlines left behind by customers. He was a billionaire, a man whose world was as far from mine as the stars. Yet last night, he had been bleeding in the rain, fragile, desperate. And he had trusted me. Arif padded into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Mama, are you thinking about the man again?" I smiled weakly. "Eat your breakfast, darling." But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking. Not when the wallet sat there, proof that last night wasn't some fever dream. Later, after I dropped Arif at school, I walked past the hospital. I told myself I was just checking, just making sure he was alive. My feet carried me into the lobby before I could change my mind. "Excuse me," I asked the nurse at the desk. "The man from the accident last night. Is he okay?" She looked at me sharply. "Are you family?" "No," I admitted, my throat tight. "I was the one who found him." Her expression softened. "He's stable now. Resting." It was a close call. Relief washed through me, though it left me shaky. I almost turned to go, but the sound of footsteps stopped me. A tall man in a black suit appeared at the far end of the hall, his pace urgent, his face hard. He spoke quickly to the nurse in low tones. I caught fragments. "Mr. Adrian, confidential, press." I froze. So his name was Adrian, the billionaire himself. The man in the suit glanced at me briefly, suspicion flickering across his eyes. I ducked my head and slipped out of the hospital before he could ask questions. My heart pounded all the way home. That evening, as I sat by the window folding laundry, I heard a knock at the door. Not the timid tap of neighbors, but a firm, commanding sound. I opened it slowly. There he was. Not in hospital gowns, not broken and bleeding, but standing straight, dressed in crisp clothes, his hair neat. His eyes found mine immediately, dark and unreadable. "You kept my secret," he said quietly. I swallowed hard, words catching in my throat. I didn't know what else to do. For a moment, he just studied me. Then, to my shock, his eyes softened, and I saw something there, something raw and unguarded. May I come in? He asked. I hesitated. My small apartment, my simple life, my son's toys scattered on the floor. It felt too exposed, too fragile. But something inside me whispered yes. And so I stepped aside. That was the moment my world tilted, though I didn't yet know how far it would fall. Adrian stood in my living room, tall and out of place among the worn sofa and mismatched chairs. He didn't comment on the peeling paint or the smallness of the space. Instead, he looked around slowly, as though every detail mattered. I offered him tea, though my hands shook as I set the cups down. He sat across from me, his presence filling the room more than the furniture ever could. For a long moment, silence hung heavy between us. Finally, he spoke. Do you know what would have happened if the press had found me last night? Broken, bleeding in the rain. I shook my head. They would have torn me apart, he said quietly. They always do. To them, I'm not a man. I'm a headline, a scandal, a price tag. His voice carried bitterness, but underneath it I heard something else. Loneliness. I looked at him carefully. But you're alive because of last night. Isn't that more important than what people think? He leaned back, studying me. Most people I know wouldn't ask that. They'd be too busy selling my story. I lowered my eyes, embarrassed. I'm not most people. No, he said softly. You're not. The air between us shifted then, warm and fragile. My heart beat faster, though I didn't want it to. I reminded myself of the gulf between us. He was a billionaire, and I was a widow scraping by, raising a child alone. Still, he watched me in a way that made me feel seen. Not as the poor widow everyone pitied, but as a woman who had chosen kindness when she didn't have to. Before I could speak, the sound of the door creaked open. Mama! Arif's voice carried into the room. He had returned from his school friend's house earlier than expected. Adrian turned toward him, his expression unreadable. Arif froze, staring at the tall stranger in our living room. Who's this? I swallowed hard, caught between truth and secrecy. This is a friend. He was hurt, and I helped him. Arif's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but before he could say more, Adrian smiled faintly. You must be Arif. My son blinked, startled. How do you know my name? Adrian glanced at me, and in that look I saw both caution and something more protective. He answered simply, Your mother told me. She's very proud of you. Arif softened, though not completely. I could see the questions forming in his young mind. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Adrian wasn't just a secret in my living room anymore. He was stepping into my world, into my family's fragile circle. And once that door opened, there would be no turning back. The next morning felt strangely normal, though my heart knew it wasn't. Adrian was still in the small spare room, and the knowledge of it made every sound in the house sharper. The kettle's whistle, the clink of Arif's spoon against his bowl, even the knock of the postman at the door, it all reminded me that I was hiding something far bigger than I could handle. Arif kept stealing glances at the closed door. Is he staying long? He asked casually, though I heard the edge in his tone. Just until he feels better, I answered, avoiding his eyes. But Arif wasn't convinced. Mama, we don't know him. What if he's dangerous? Before I could reply, the door creaked open and Adrian stepped out. His shirt was wrinkled, his expression calm, but his presence filled the kitchen instantly. He crouched slightly to meet Arif's suspicious gaze. You're right to be cautious, Adrian said softly. Your mother is smart to raise a son who asks questions. Arif blinked, startled by the unexpected praise. Then, after a beat, he mumbled, "I guess." Adrian's lips curved in a faint smile. For the first time, I saw my son's guarded expression soften, just a little. The fragile peace, however, didn't last. Later that day, I walked to the corner shop for groceries. While waiting in line, I overheard two neighbors whispering. "Did you see that man near her house?" One woman murmured. "Tall, well-dressed even in old clothes. Doesn't look like someone from here." "Maybe she's hiding something," the other replied. "Or someone." The words crawled under my skin. By the time I returned home, fear was gnawing at me. I wasn't just protecting Adrian anymore. I was risking the little stability Arif and I had built. Inside, I found Adrian sitting at the table with Arif, showing him something on his phone. My son laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in so long. The sight pulled at my heart. But then Adrian looked up, and his smile faltered when he saw my face. He could tell I had heard something. "They're talking, aren't they?" he asked quietly after Arif went outside to play. "Yes," I admitted, setting the groceries down with trembling hands. "They're noticing you. And if they dig too deep," I swallowed, "they'll know who you are." Adrian leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "Do you want me to leave?" The question cut through me. I wanted to say yes, to protect Arif and myself from scandal. But as I looked at him, the man who carried secrets heavier than I could imagine, yet still found a way to make my son laugh, I couldn't. "I don't know," I whispered. For the first time since the accident, his carefully composed expression cracked. There was pain in his eyes, raw and human. And before I could ask what it meant, a loud knock rattled the door. My heart jumped. Because somehow I knew whatever stood outside that door was about to drag Adrian's secret closer to the light. The sound of that knock echoed through the small house, sharp and urgent. My heart thudded in my chest as I wiped my palms against my apron. Adrian's eyes locked with mine, and for the first time since he had stayed under my roof, he looked genuinely unsettled. "Don't open it," he whispered quickly. But the knock came again, louder this time. Whoever it was, they weren't leaving. Arif peeked in from outside, frowning. "Mama, someone's at the door. Should I check?" "No," I said firmly, moving toward it. My hands trembled as I turned the knob, half expecting to see a uniformed police officer or some suited man ready to expose Adrian's truth. Instead, it was a tall man in a leather jacket, his face worn by travel and dust. He studied me quickly before his eyes shifted past my shoulder. The second he spotted Adrian in the dim kitchen light, his entire body stiffened. "Found you," the man muttered. Adrian stood, every line of his posture tense. "You shouldn't be here." The man's gaze flicked back to me, sharp and questioning. "So this is where you've been hiding? In some widow's house?" The words stung, not because of what he called me, but because he said it with disdain, as though my home, my life, wasn't worthy of Adrian's presence. Arif took a step closer to me, clutching the hem of my dress. Adrian noticed, his jaw tightening. "Leave them out of this," Adrian said, stepping forward. But the stranger only smirked. "Do you really think you can just vanish? People are asking questions, Adrian. The board, the press. Your disappearance is starting to look like a scandal." Board. Press. My mind reeled, connecting dots I had been too afraid to string together. Adrian wasn't just a man with secrets. He was someone whose absence made headlines. The stranger's voice lowered. "They're closing in. If you don't come back, it won't just ruin your empire. It'll drag down anyone associated with you." His gaze shifted toward me deliberately. My blood ran cold. Adrian's fists clenched at his sides. He stepped closer to the door, lowering his voice. "Get out. Now." But the stranger only gave me one last hard look before retreating into the night. I closed the door quickly, leaning against it as though I could keep the world outside from seeping in. My breath came fast and shallow. What did he mean? I demanded finally, my voice trembling. Who are you really, Adrian? For a long moment, he didn't answer. He just stared at me, eyes shadowed with a weight I couldn't understand. And then, with a weary sigh, he whispered, "It's time you knew the truth." I stood frozen in the middle of my small living room, my breath catching as Adrian's words hung heavy in the air. "It's time you knew the truth." The flickering light from the old lamp cast shadows across his face, making his features appear even sharper, more haunted. For weeks I had sensed it, that there was more to him than he let on, but I never expected this moment to come crashing in like a storm. I swallowed hard, clutching the back of a chair for support. "Then tell me, who are you really?" Adrian exhaled, running a hand through his hair. His eyes softened, as if he wished he could protect me from the answer. My real name, is Adrian Sinclair. I'm the heir to Sinclair Enterprises. I disappeared 2 months ago after a car accident. Everyone thinks I'm dead or hiding abroad. The man who came tonight? He's part of the board trying to force me back before I'm ready. Sinclair. The name slammed into me like a wave. Even in my quiet life, I'd heard it whispered on the news, printed on magazines at the grocery store. Billionaire family. Scandal. Power. And now he was standing in my kitchen, a man I'd nursed back to health, a man who had laughed with my son, a man who kissed me under the moonlight. "You're saying you're a billionaire?" The words sounded absurd in my mouth. His lips curved into a pained half-smile. "I was born into it, yes. But here with you, I'm just Adrian. No money. No empire. Just a man who's been hiding from everything he thought he wanted." I shook my head, my mind spinning. "Why didn't you tell me from the start? Do you know how dangerous this could be for me and Arif? For us." His face fell, guilt clouding his eyes. "I know. And I hated keeping it from you. But the truth, it destroys everything it touches. I've seen what greed and power do to people. I didn't want that poison near you." For a moment, I wanted to scream, to tell him he had no right to barge into my life with lies and half-truths. But then I remembered the nights he sat by Arif's bed when he had nightmares, the mornings he chopped vegetables clumsily in my kitchen, the way his eyes softened when they rested on me. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was the man who had quietly become a part of my life. Still, fear gripped me. What happens now, Adrian? That man, he won't stop. And if people find out? He stepped closer, his voice steady, his hand reaching out to mine. "Then I'll protect you. Both of you. No matter what it costs." His touch was warm, grounding, but his words made my chest tighten. Protection meant danger was near, and danger meant everything I had built could be ripped away again. Outside, the wind howled against the thin windows, as though echoing the storm now raging inside me. And deep down, I knew life as I once knew it was over. The man I had let into my heart wasn't just a stranger with secrets. He was a billionaire whose world was about to collide with mine. And nothing would ever be the same. The days after Adrian's confession were a blur of tension and stolen glances. On the surface, life went on as usual. I still woke up at dawn to prepare breakfast for Arif, still walked through the market with my basket, still smiled politely at the neighbors who waved at me. But beneath it all, everything had shifted. I wasn't just living with a man anymore. I was living with a secret that could shatter my world. It started with whispers. 2 women at the market lowered their voices when I passed by, their eyes flicking toward Adrian as he carried bags of vegetables beside me. At first I thought it was just gossip, harmless curiosity about why a man like him stayed in my humble home. But then, at the pharmacy, The cashier hesitated when Adrian handed over cash, staring a little too long at his face before nervously looking away. That night, I found an article online, one I hadn't been searching for but somehow stumbled upon. Missing billionaire heir. Where is Adrian Sinclair? His photo stared back at me from the glowing screen. Same sharp jawline. Same piercing eyes. The same man who was now fixing a wobbly leg on my table with an old screwdriver. My heart pounded as I looked from the phone to him. He noticed, of course. He always did. You found out, he said quietly, wiping sweat from his brow. I didn't have to look far, I replied, my voice trembling. People are already noticing you. How long before someone calls the police, or the press, or worse? He put the screwdriver down and sat across from me, his eyes full of something I couldn't quite name. Fear, determination, maybe both. I can't go back yet. Not to them. Not to that world. I'm not ready. I wanted to scream that his world was already here, creeping into mine, threatening to crush it. Instead, I just whispered, "And what about us? What happens when they find you here? When they find me?" Before he could answer, there was a sharp knock at the door. I froze. Adrian tensed, every muscle in his body coiled like a spring. The knock came again, harder this time, and a voice deep and commanding called out, "Mr. Sinclair, we know you're in there." My blood ran cold. Adrian looked at me, his eyes burning with urgency. "Stay behind me, no matter what happens." And in that moment I knew the secret was no longer ours to keep. The air was heavy with silence after the knock, as if the night itself held its breath. My hands shook as I clutched the edge of the table, while Adrian stood like a stone, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the door. The voice outside called again, louder this time. "Adrian Sinclair, open the door. This doesn't have to get ugly." Adrian turned to me quickly, his voice low and urgent. "Take Arif into the back room. Don't come out until I say." I wanted to argue, to tell him that this was my house, my life, and I wasn't going to hide in my own home. But the look in his eyes silenced me. It wasn't fear I saw, it was resignation, as though he knew this moment was inevitable. Before I could move, the door burst open. Two men in tailored suits stepped in, their polished shoes out of place on my worn floorboards. Behind them, a woman followed, tall and sharp-eyed, her heels clicking like gunshots against the tiles. "Mr. Sinclair," she said coolly, her accent British, her tone dripping with authority. "You've given us quite the chase." Adrian didn't flinch. "I'm not going back with you, Victoria." The woman, Victoria, raised a brow. "You think you have a choice? Your father is furious. Your company is in chaos. You disappear for months, and now we find you living with—" Her eyes flicked to me, her lips curling with disdain. "Her." Heat rose in my cheeks, but Adrian stepped closer to me, his hand brushing mine as though to steady me. "Careful with your words," he warned her. The taller of the two men stepped forward. "Sir, let's not make this harder. We're here to take you home. Back where you belong." Adrian laughed bitterly. "Belong? You mean back to the cage you all built for me?" The room crackled with tension. Arif's small voice suddenly called from the hallway, "Mama!" All eyes turned. My heart leapt into my throat. I rushed to block him from view, but Victoria had already noticed. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "So, this is why you stayed." She looked from Adrian to me with cruel delight. "A widow with a child? You really have fallen, Adrian." Adrian's arm tightened around me, his body a shield. "Say another word about them, and you'll regret it." For a moment, no one moved. Then Victoria spoke again, her voice like ice. "You have 24 hours to decide. Come back with us willingly, or we'll make sure she and her boy pay the price for your stubbornness." And just like that, they turned and left, leaving the door swinging open in the night wind. I could barely breathe. Adrian pulled me close, his chest heaving, his whisper urgent against my hair. "I won't let them touch you. But to protect you, I might have to walk away." And in that moment, my world tilted again. The man I had saved from an accident might now be forced to sacrifice himself. For me. The night after Victoria's threat was the longest of my life. I sat by the window, watching the shadows of the trees sway, my thoughts tangled in fear and hope. Adrian hadn't spoken much since they left, but I could feel the storm inside him. Finally, as dawn broke, he stood and came to me. His eyes were dark with exhaustion, but steady. "I can't let them hurt you or Arif," he said quietly. "If leaving means keeping you safe, then that's what I'll do." My chest tightened, but I refused to let my tears fall. "So you'll go back to them? To that life you hate?" His hands cupped my face, his touch trembling. "Every bone in me wants to stay here. With you. With him. But you heard her. They won't stop until they've destroyed everything you have." Arif stirred in the next room, his soft voice calling, "Mama!" It was enough to break the silence like glass. Adrian turned toward the sound, and I saw the battle raging inside him. That morning, as the sun spilled gold across the small kitchen, Adrian made his choice. He sat across from me, his jaw set, his hand gripping mine. "I'm done running. They can't control me anymore. But if I fight them, you'll be pulled into it too. So I need to know, do you want to stand with me, no matter what comes?" The weight of his words pressed against my chest. My heart pounded with fear, but beneath it was something stronger. I had lost before. I had lived through grief. And I wasn't about to lose the man who had shown me love when I least expected it. "I'm not afraid," I whispered. "Not if we face it together." His eyes filled, not with weakness, but with relief. He pulled me into his arms, and for the first time since the knock on the door, I felt safe. Not because the danger was gone, but because we had chosen each other. Outside, the world was waking. Birds sang, the village stirred, and in that fragile moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The billionaire I had saved from an accident had just vowed to fight for me, and for the life we were building. And whatever storm was coming, we would face it side by side. The city lights glittered in the distance as if the world itself was holding its breath. I sat with Adrian on the porch of our small home, the night air warm against my skin. His hand rested over mine, steady and certain, and for the first time in years, I felt like the ground beneath me wasn't about to fall apart. Life hadn't turned into a fairy tale overnight. The shadows of his family's threats still lingered. The memories of my own pain still haunted me when the nights grew quiet. But there, in that silence, I had found something stronger than fear. I had found someone willing to fight for me, not because of what I could offer, but because of who I was. Arif's laughter rang out from inside, light and pure. Adrian's eyes softened at the sound, and I realized how much he had changed too. He wasn't just the man I had rescued on that rainy night anymore. He wasn't just a billionaire or a broken soul searching for meaning. He was ours, mine and Arif's. I leaned into him, my voice barely a whisper. "Do you think we'll make it?" He kissed the top of my head, his breath warm against my hair. "We already have," he said. "And whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The stars stretched wide above us, endless and bright, and in their light, I no longer saw a future of loneliness. I saw love. I saw hope. And I saw a story still being written, one day at a time. Because sometimes the most unexpected rescues are the ones that save more than just your life, they save your heart.